Hi, Joe. Hi, Uri. Thanks for joining me today, and I'm really looking forward for the chat.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. That's I usually never get interviewed, so this should be fun. Should be different.
Yeah.
Welcome to our interview. We are really happy that we have celebrated like you on our podcast.
Thank you so
So,
much. Yeah, I really appreciate the invite. This should be fun for sure.
so let's start as we always do. It's an introduction, and I am the guy who is always starting with some screwing up activity and saying about the testing stars, something which I think it's true, and they could then fix it. So, Joe is now testing star, YouTuber, test automation expert, and he has plenty of years experience from like hands-on test automation. And nowadays he's watching market and helping us to orientate in that area of test automation and trends and new ideas. So I really appreciate what he's doing for us as a community, and I am heavily inspired by his interviews and blog posts and topics and ideas he's sharing across our community. So that's what I learned, or what I learned from following you.
Yeah, yep.
Now, maybe I'll add some more details. You are ex C Sharp Selenium
Hmm.
test automation engineer. Also, and you also work with BDD approach using SpecFlow.
Mhm.
If I
Serenity.
understand
Serenity.
Serenity, okay.
Yep.
And you are probably guitar player.
Yes, very much. I actually went to Berklee College of Music. I wanted to be a professional musician back in the day, and that's was what my major was when I started off. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way, but I kind of parlayed it into online presence, which is kind of like music related, where I could buy a bunch of audio and video gear at least still.
Cool. So what I missed? What are other
Yes.
hobbies, other tools?
So I started my career, in the mid '90s doing tech support for Microsoft Visual Basic. I don't know how many people remember that. And then I started my career basically as a performance engineer. Is what I did most of my testing with using LoadRunner. Basically, I went started a new company. They had these tools on the shelf. I'm like, hey, what is this? And I taught myself it, and all of a sudden, I learned LoadRunner and WinRunner, and I became the automation guy just by teaching myself. And that's what started this whole thing. I used to be a big contributor to Mercury Interactive. I was a Mercury maven, and then obviously they got bought out. I started my blog in 2010. I started my podcast in 2014, and I started one of the first online events in automation called Automation Guild in 2017. Then I was laid off from my job in 2019, and I said,
Uh-huh.
"Hey, I've been doing this on the side for 10 years now. Let me do it full time," and that's where I am now. It's been a wild ride, and it's crazy how the podcast's almost 10 years old now. And I think the automation event I did was, but now it's common, but when I started, there weren't really any. So it's kind of fun to see how other ones are popping up as well.
I
Yeah,
see.
and basically my hobbies are guitar playing, reading, pretty lame automation. I love creating content. I love speaking with the experts. I really started the podcast to learn, kind of get backhanded free consulting from other experts because my company wouldn't pay for it. And then just take what I learned and sharing it with the community and giving credit to all the awesome testers we have in our community. It's a great place to be, I think, as an employee and working with other testers for sure.
And are you sometimes missing this like practitionering, or how to call it, like writing the code for some test automation for some specific product?
Yeah, I do still do it a little bit on my own, but it's at this point I'm so busy with the business now that yeah, it's very difficult to do. I kind of miss it, but then I get to learn from people that are doing it, and so it's even better because
Mhm.
they're doing it better than probably any way I could do it now. So it's just good to learn from the next generation almost. So yeah.
Yeah, I see. So maybe that's enough for the introduction, and move on. Let's move on to the second part, which is hot seat questions. And maybe Uri, you could do it, or should I?
Yes, I can do it. I hope, though, Joe, that you are ready. That you prepare, I don't know, 5 questions that very
Okay.
simple.
Yep.
Yeah, the first one. When was the last time that you reported a bug you find?
Oh gosh. 2017,
Oh,
2018. Yeah.
Okay.
good. The next one. Is better to be influencer or a tester?
Ooh, a tester.
Ah. Next one. Test automation or autonomous testing?
Test automation.
Really? Okay. And what is your best software testing conference?
Automation Guild, my own shameless plug.
I'm not surprised. And the last one, Cypress, Robot Framework, or maybe other tool?
Ooh. I like them all. I'd say other tools because that's what I do. I work with other tools.
Just short answer.
Yeah,
please.
sure. Not
Other.
to be more politician, Which one?
I'd say other because you said other's an option, right?
Yeah, very good politician answer there. But yeah, that was our, hot seat. Not really, like hard question, but not easy to answer. We know
Yeah.
that we can maybe continue to the topic. And what we would like to discuss is your new book, and if you
Sure.
can maybe promote or you publish in a new book and tell us something more about this.
Yeah. So as you know, I've been podcasting since 2014. So what I did is I have multiple podcasts. I have the automation podcast. I have one that's now called the DevOps podcast, and I have a news show, and I used to have a security show. So over all these podcasts, I have over 600 interviews. But the automation one, I have over 450 something. So what I did, I took the best of the best of all those interviews. I took 9 years and I distilled it into bite-sized, actionable daily advice, and I put it into the book. So basically, the last question I asked everyone is, give me one piece of actual advice you'd give someone to help them with their automation testing efforts. And then what I did, I took that information, I took the top ones, I put the quote in, I gave credit to the expert, and then I did like a little blurb of like how you can think about this quote, how you can maybe implement it to make things better for yourself, and then just a little journal section that people could then jot down their thoughts. So basically, I try to make it 260 actual affirmations. It should be every business day. Someone starts their day with an intention. They only need, I know people are busy, so they only need like 5 to 10 minutes just to go over what the expert said, think about how they can implement it themselves, and then maybe try it for themselves during the day, and then put their thoughts in. So it's basically, I don't know if I wrote a book as much as I took all the expert advice I got from all my past guests and just made a collection of the best for folks to take advantage of.
This is pretty nice idea. I didn't know about the structure, so
Yeah.
maybe I didn't read properly your website, but that's pretty nice. And maybe that's very good book to have on toilet, so you can read all the time you are there.
Yeah, absolutely. I made it like
one
so
story.
Yeah. People are so busy. That's one thing I always get. I don't have time to attend a conference. Well, you have time to do 5 to 10 minutes just to listen to an expert. And it's not my opinion. It's what this expert is saying that has real world advice. And I just give a little bit of my insight of what I would do to try to implement it.
Cool.
So I think it's a really great time saver. And a lot of people already tell me that buying it for interns, people that are just starting off. So it's been a lot of good feedback. And I'm just happy to be able to, kind of highlight all the other experts. I think that everyone that's in testing, whether they have 6 months or 30 years, they're still an expert because they're probably working on something that no one else has seen before and they've worked out a thing. So I just like to highlight, it's not necessarily a big name through all these, but it's an expert that has some really good advice that people should listen to. Yeah.
And did you order these ideas in some specific manner, or it's random, right?
It is random. Yeah, I should have, but I didn't want to I try to keep my opinions out of it, not make it opinionated. Like this fits into this category, if this fits into that category. So I try to make it as organic and as random as possible.
I really like that. So that completely maybe scratch out some of the questions we have.
Yeah. I have the question
book.
that if somebody in your book is also from Eastern Europe, that if you have also probably you have some European author there. Is there somebody from Eastern Europe, like Czech Republic or Slovakia? I don't know if Filip is there.
Philip is not. There are a lot of people, and they can. I know. I can't think off the top of my head where folks are from. It's been 10 years. Pekka's in there, Pekka Clock, but he's probably
from Finland, no?
Yeah, Finland.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I'm sure I have people from Poland. A lot of people from Poland.
Really? Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And, maybe Gaspar from Hungary, the co-author of Spec Flow.
I've interviewed Gus. I don't know why he's not in it. You guys are you should have known. But he is not. But there are people. They can definitely check it out. I know there's people all over the world in the book. It's not just the U.S. for sure. But there's a lot of people from Poland, Netherlands. We have people from the Netherlands, people from Germany.
Can we order this book also in Europe?
You can. The problem is right now it's on Amazon, and so Amazon has different stores. So Amazon India, Amazon Netherlands, Amazon UK. It is there. It depends on what they allow. Some have the paperback version, some have the ebook and paperback, some just have the ebook, some have the hardback. I know a lot of people, like in Ireland, it's not available. The problem is, even if I made it, like I priced it as the least amount of money I possibly can that Amazon allows me. So I'm not making a profit on it. It just covers Amazon's cost to print and to ship. But for me to ship to other countries, it would be like I checked for Ireland, it'd be $25 just to ship it. So it's kind of tough to get it out. But the ebook is available on Kindle. It's a part of the Kindle Select program for 90 days. And you can only do it on Kindle. Once that's over, I'm gonna make the ebook available on my site really cheap, so anyone around the world can download it.
Cool. So let's move to the second topic we prepared for today, and it's Robocon 2024. It was announced just today, and I just quickly read the blog post, and you will be again there, but again only online, right?
Yes.
So could you tell to the people who don't know Robocon what's that about and what you will be doing there?
Absolutely.
And why online?
And why only online?
They have an on-site one as well. I'm actually quite an introvert, so that's why I started everything online. I usually don't do on-site events, so they have me usually run the online event, and they do the on-site event. So it's kind of like a hybrid. People that go to the on-site can also join the online. It just makes it available for outside of people that can't travel as well. So that's why we do the online piece. It'll be the third time. Robocon is an awesome framework. It sits on top of a bunch of different plugins that works with everything: Selenium, Playwright, Cypress. I don't know about Cypress, but you could do security testing with it. You could do all kinds of different things with it. And I just think it's a great framework that, for some reason, in the U.S., I don't think it's as popular as maybe in Europe or certain parts of the country, the world. But I think it's a really great framework. Pekka Clock's awesome. It's a great event. I always learn myself. There's a lot of people that when you go to these events and you say, wow, I can't believe Robot Framework does that, and it's pretty eye-opening what you can do with it. It's very powerful, I think.
Okay. I found also Robot Framework very practical, especially for the non-techie testers who are trying to get into automation. That might be pretty practical. But but it's pretty old tool. So if that's, I don't know whether we should judge that, but if you...
Well, it's an older framework, but it does I know they have a new Playwright integration, so they are able. It's not really a tool as much as it's like a framework that it integrates with all the other things. So you get the benefits of all the newer tools, and you just get this nice scaffolding that handles all the like it makes it easier to write tests. I interview a lot of people on my podcast, and I'm blown away by some of the amount of testing they've got done with this framework and been very successful. So it's, even though it is for, you could use it for beginners. I know it's a lot of hardcore automation engineers that work for a GE actually use it for their day-to-day job, and they love it, and they're able to really scale really, really well with it.
Yeah, this is what we are using in Multitude, that we have this robot framework, and now we are migrating with this Playwright to the library, and this learning curve for the people are really, really fast.
Yes.
This was, the idea. Now we are discussing, robot framework with Playwright or pure Playwright. That's, that is what we have still. That yes or not? What do you think?
Personally, so I come from a background where, we in my company we were going to do Java and Selenium automation. And I'm like, why start from scratch? It's just an API. I found Serenity, and Serenity is like, it's kind of like a robot framework that has a wrapper on top of Selenium and REST API, and it does these awesome reports for you. You can use Cucumber BDD to drive it. It just right out of the box. It has like what may have taken someone 6 months to a year to create. You can hit the ground running and have all those features available to you. And I think a lot of people, that's where they kind of get things wrong, is they're not necessarily developers. They may be awesome testers. They may be okay developers. And they start to try to create a framework. And so the framework is going to be just probably okay. And that's not a dig against testers. It's just that why focus, have your developers or use something that's been created by a developer already, have your testers focusing on testing, I think is the best of both worlds. And that's why I really like using existing frameworks. So even like WebDriver IO, Selenium's under the scenes, Serenity, Selenium's under the scenes. It's not saying Selenium's bad. It's just, I think using these frameworks or Selenium base for Python makes it a lot easier to start right out of the box, where you don't have to try to create a framework that no one ends up using, or you don't know how to create correctly. Why not use a industry standard already and hit the ground running right off the bat?
We are a bit drifting out from the Robocon, but I have one more question, which was provoked by that your explanation. What do you think about BDD?
So
you mentioned that you was using it.
Yep. All right. So it's kind of a trick question, I think, because it depends how you use it, obviously. So when I was using BDD, the reason why we decided to use it was communication, because we work for a very technical application for healthcare, and not everyone was on the same page. We said, great, we'll use behavior-driven development to kind of capture the communications we're having with our radiologists, bring it in the house, everyone's talking the same language. So then when we start devising tests, it's very readable. If we ever got audited, our reports would be very readable to the auditor. They would know what was going on because we were using high-level context that they could follow along, not code. So in that way, that's why we chose BDD, and that's why I think it's great. But it ends up being, people start just using it as a framework. And when that happens, when you take the communication part out of it, and you just use it as a framework, from my experience, I've actually seen people that say, I don't care, I'll use it as a framework, and it works fine for them. Great. But I think it adds extra overhead if you're just using it for an automation framework. But that's
what I found in many cases, that people always say, because we could communicate with business, but at the end no one reads the Gherkin code, and it ends up that automation engineers and developers building two layers. So that's why I was asking that whether you have some different experience, whether this health, what was that, the business you said? Radiology, whether they were some business users, let's call them business users, who used that feature files to understand what was tested.
So we tried. That was the goal. They said, yeah, sure, we can read it, but they would never read it. But what was great about Serenity is the output. It's living documentation, so that rather than updating a wiki or something, the test cases would update themselves. So at the end, you'd have a report. Someone new comes on board, you go, where are the test cases? Well, here's the output of the test. It's all in English. You can follow. You can learn the application. So when done correctly, you get the best of both worlds. Even if business users aren't looking at it, even yourself, when you look at, you could read it, the output, and it would be helpful. And also for an auditor, you don't want auditors to stop poking around your code, because it just, the bigger the surface area, the more errors they could find, the more issues where you can get audited. So just a lot easier to hand them a document they can read and say, there you go. So it had multiple benefits, and obviously one of them was, well, we'll have our business users use it, and obviously they didn't, but yeah, for sure.
Now I'll use this to push us back to Robocon. Robot Framework also support BDD, and so you could use it in that way. And I also saw one organization where they use that as a approach for writing manual tests, and then they decide what test will be automated. So they use these high-level keywords in robot framework. And I hope we didn't lost. No, we have you. Your camera was frozen, so I thought that we lost you, Joe.
Yep.
So let's move on. The last one, a bit controversial, because you publish your blog post, and I think it starts as a podcast, or I think it was podcast first, and then you wrote a blog post,
Yeah.
if I remember that. And I'll share it now. I'll share the screen to show you what
We'll
I'm
get
talking
critiqued.
about.
Yep.
So these are the top 13 automation testing trends. This is the blog post.
That's us.
And I'll just skip all the details, but these are the 13 ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I would like to go one by one and quickly comment.
Okay.
And sometimes I will slow down and challenge that. So innovation in
It's
mobile
Now you can
testing.
open your crystal ball.
Yeah. Dust it off.
Yeah.
So innovation in mobile testing. I agree, but this is something I saw a lot of companies talking, and nothing is happening there. So I don't know whether you agree or not, but what do you expect that will happen this year? Because that's the my, how to say, skepticism also around the area. We expect that there will be something better than Appium, and nothing is going on, like to support both platforms and being stable and quick enough and so on.
What I think is interesting is there's a lot of image-based testing that's been around for a while, but the technology has gotten better, where it doesn't matter if it's a mobile device, a desktop, a web browser. That's a lot of innovation. A lot of companies coming out with that really smart image-based automation. Even though it's they've had solutions to do this, but these newer ones use algorithms in the background that make it better. And there's also other ones that are using more of an API approach, which I thought was interesting. And I thought would definitely take off. And so that's what I meant by it's based on interviews with companies. So that's what I think. I think we're going to get there. I think we're probably going to move towards a visual based. That's controversial, visual based type automation, and get away from probably a lot of the.
I would be interested whether there is a support for a headless approach in that visuals, because that's something I remember it was horrible to apply or implement.
That's true.
So if this is solved already, then it could be much better world of testing. And continuous accessibility test automation, I believe, yes, that's there. We even do need to discuss.
Yes.
Unified test management platform. Apart from that test Sigma you mentioned, maybe in this article or somewhere else, I couldn't see anything else. Maybe only one move that Jira is losing over GitHub and GitLab and all these tools, like a lot of CI/CD tools becoming stronger in I call it ticketing. Do you see something else there apart from this test Sigma?
Yeah, so I think what the thing is here is when I started, it was just Mercury Interactive, so that's Test Director and everything integrated with Test Director, and you're able to run and do mappings and see requirements and all that. So I've seen a lot of companies like Zabrunner. There's Allure, Test Ops, Testum came up with Test Ops. Meeble's been pushing Test Ops, where it's these all-in-all platforms now that kind of try to do it all. Excel Q, where it's not just the automation of the test, but also being able to keep track of the requirements, seeing what you may have missed, so give you a higher level thing. So I have been seeing a lot of companies going towards one of these models, more of a unified model.
And do you think that is still necessary to have, test management platform?
I personally do, just to have that insight for sure. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. The programming languages I will skip. The data ops.
Yeah.
This is also maybe 2 or 3 years old idea, or I spotted 3 years ago. I cannot see any traction there.
Yeah, so I ran an event on data for a company for data ops, something. Oh, this is really going to get people excited by it. It's something I've been waiting for. And yeah, like you said, when I wrote it, I was excited by it, but now I'm not seeing the excitement from others. So yeah, may have been more of a wish than a reality.
And then
Yeah,
item number 6. I couldn't believe it's on the list.
me too. Me too. I was totally surprised.
Well,
Why?
more,
What?
more machine learning. It's all data, big data. We've been hearing a lot about big data. How do you interact with the big data? It's still SQL, or it's SQL-like syntax. So testers, if they don't know it already, I think it's something I thought would, if data ops took off and big data, then some way of interacting with that data is going to be needed,
I
even though
would
it's been around forever.
I would agree with this if it would be innovated. If you thought that SQL is dead,
Mm.
it's not. But otherwise, we have it on our curriculum for ages already. So I cannot see any
Well,
trends
a lot of
there.
new testers, they don't mention SQL. They don't.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
when I looked at job descriptions as well, I was just surprised to still see SQL listed as like a top requirement, because I've been around forever. I'm like, oh, maybe it's just me. I'm old. It's SQL,
Mhm.
but it's still, maybe I was just surprised that it's still a hardcore requirement for testers.
Yeah, I was surprised as well because if I had been starting with testing, I know more than 10 years ago that this was like main requirement. Do you have a SQL?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
right,
know, and now it's like standard. Nobody here in the region are asking if you have this skill because everybody expected that you know this. This
right,
is
right.
why I was surprised that SQL is back.
Yes.
So synthetic data, it's I would say obvious. We don't need to discuss that. AI
Mhm.
automation in production. This is the RPA with AI, or
This is more like a sniffer where, you know how people always trying to guess what customers are doing? A lot of
uh-huh.
times what people do now, they listen to actual customers in production, and then they're able to create a real model. It's not a model you're guessing on, it's a model based on what real users are doing, and then using that model then to generate test data. So it's almost like a shift right to shift left approach rather than shift left to shift right.
I see. Then API simulation. I was thinking whether Postman is growing in that area. I heard that Postman is somehow declining in the dominance because of karate, and I heard
Yeah,
also about some stories from Playwright community that they are migrating Postman to Playwright because of the new licensing
yeah,
fees.
yep, I've heard that as
So,
well.
but what about the simulation? Is it? It's probably not related to that move.
Not related to that move, but it's more like as we go towards cloud native applications and you need to rely on a lot of third party applications and services. How do you test for that? How do you make sure your application's resilient? Using API simulation to then almost help you with chaos engineering to throw up a service that's not really the service, but acts like a service and turn it off and see how your application responds to it, or being able to do things like that. I think it's going to become more and more popular as we go more cloud native.
Okay. Self-service cloud development environments, probably I could agree.
Mhm.
Platform engineering, what's that about?
So more and more companies now go towards platform engineering. I've been hearing more about, so rather than DevOps, it's more like platform, having the infrastructure and the tools set up, more so to have your users be able to self-service and take advantage of everything on their own, without having a specific DevOps company group that takes care of everything. So
Mhm.
creating the infrastructure, the tools, everything for the company, and then make it more self-service so that developers can take advantage of it without
Mhm.
having like a gatekeeper for it.
And you mentioned also that chaos engineering, etc. This is also our domain, what we are doing, and also we have like how to say the fight club in the company that it's a responsibility of the testers or the DevOps or platform
Yeah,
engineer that who
right.
in the end we have the cross-functional team. The team is responsible for the quality,
Yeah,
the whole quality.
exactly. Yep.
But where you see it, because originally this is part of the SRE or platform engineering, this
Yep.
chaos testing, chaos engineering. For example, in our company, there are the testers are doing this. Where you see this domain.
So maybe I'm wrong. I think testers play a huge role in software development. Even if they're not physically doing it, they're the ones that are actually the leaders. So testers usually have bad self-esteem, but I think they're more like high-level leaders at some point where they know about testing, they know about the tools. They may not necessarily be the ones that implement it, but they tell their teams and their sprint teams, hey, we need chaos engineering. Here's some things we look at. Let's do it. So they're the ones that should be leading the charge. Or I love being hands-on. If they could be hands-on, even better. But I think it's a whole team effort. But it's almost like testers, I think, are the leaders in this domain. That's how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last two. AI assistants in automation testing. I think it's obvious. What I found is that a lot of people don't understand what could be behind, like very specifically. I always discussing and trying to say that it's not only ChatGPT, that there are plenty of other ideas and opportunities. And it was probably not on your list when you wrote this article that we didn't know. It was, what was the date? It's April. Maybe there was already. I don't know when it was.
That's in January 4th, 2023.
It's January. Sorry, I thought it's
yeah, January. Yeah.
So probably on that time it was not so trendy.
Right.
But
nope. I was a leader in this part. My crystal ball was strong on this one, I think.
Yeah. And ask better questions, I understand, as a soft skill for the testers, right? That's something we could. Okay, cool. Yeah. What was the most painful for me was the item 6. I still think like that shouldn't be there. That shouldn't be there.
I'll be a little honest. I was trying to help promote that event as well, so I thought,
Yeah.
And like I said, I actually went into trends for 2023, and there's still people asking for sequel. And like I said, a lot of people don't know that, so I just wanted to highlight it. It's still a thing.
Yeah. And is from your point of view, is still valid now in June, or you can add something more? Yeah. Okay, we know your crystal ball.
Okay, now I'm just closing my screen. So that's it from our list today. Great. We have just last part, which is some wrap up, and you could maybe promote or thanks to someone to from your network if you wish.
Yeah. So I'll be promotional because it's also thanking everyone. So I'd say grab this book. All you need to do is go to testskill.com/get-book. That'll take you to Amazon. But if you're in a different country, use your Amazon one. And I want to thank everyone. There's too many people to thank, but everyone that contributed to this book. So just look at the index, and those are all the folks that I would highly recommend. Everyone follows and gives a big kudos for sharing their time on my podcast all these years, really helping the community. So a big shout out to all them. And you can find out about them by getting my book at testskill.com/get-book.
Okay, and big shout out to you, Joe, that you joined us today. Hopefully it was a bit fun.
Yeah.
At least for us, it was.
Yeah.
And
thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely, thank you. I'd love to be back. So thanks for inviting me.
And see you soon somewhere else, maybe on LinkedIn or YouTube
or European conference on site.
Yeah, for sure.